Hello, I am Laura Tubino from Deakin University, and I will present the paper Transforming Assessment, Challenges Beyond Design. The context of this study is the School of IT capstone experience. This is a project-based learning experience, where each trimester, 700 students from the School of IT, across all the degrees offered, come together in teams to work on different projects. Each team is comprised by 7 to 10 students, which means that each trimester we have 70 to 100 teams. 30 academic mentors work with these teams. And this means that there are many challenges. For example, it is very difficult to provide an individual grade to students in teams, and also it is difficult to be equitable across teams. Equitability is impacted by many different things. For example, the composition of the team, the difficulty of the project, and the engagement of the supervisor. To address these challenges, we transformed the assessment in this program, from being focused on the product to being focused on the skills demonstrated by students while working on producing the product. Some of these skills are essential for working on projects. For example, communication, teamwork, and of course, software engineering skills. Some other skills we consider as advanced, as they are mainly essential behaviors for the people leading the projects, for example, self-awareness and mentoring. A grading system comprises 5 levels: fail, pass, credit, distinction, and high distinction. Each of these levels is associated to a certain percentage of achievement. However, in our rubric, we gave grades meaning by associating each grade with a persona. These personas are based on adult developmental stages and the characteristics of each of these stages. In the rubric, the description for each skill at a specific level of achievement will match the characteristics of that developmental level. For example, a pass student will be able to do what they are told and not a very high standards, whereas a high distinction students will have a vision for the project, will help define the path, and will guide other students to lead. So students at the start of the trimester engage with the rubric and are asked to reflect on what grade they want to achieve based on the skills and descriptions at each level. For example, let's say a student decides that their goal is to achieve a credit. While working in their team, these students will not only focus on the product being developed, but also on demonstrating the skills defined in the rubric at the level expected. After the first 3 weeks, which comprise the first iteration, the student needs to reflect on what level they have demonstrated for each skill or behavior described in the rubric, and they need to provide evidence. At this point, the academic mentor provides feedback on these reflections and evidence. This feedback comes in the form of a nominal grade, and ideally in the form of written comments. For the feedback to be useful, the student must be able to use it to improve in the next iteration submission, which is after 3 weeks. It is thus essential for the feedback to be timely. That means that it needs to be provided in the first week, and actionable. That means that the feedback needs to tell the student what they need to do to improve. When the feedback is timely and actionable, the student can reflect on it and improve their work and their next submission. In this way, the student grows and develops skills as they work on the project. This process is repeated 4 times. The first 3, the grade is nominal, and they receive actionable guidance. The 4th iteration, they submit a portfolio. This is when grading takes place. But the grading is not an accumulation of the different nominal grades or an assessment of the final portfolio submission. It is actually an assessment of the whole student's journey. Here we have our results of 1 trimester in 2020. If we look at these student results, we can see that from iteration to iteration, they appear to improve their skills and thus their grades. However, this information is not enough to understand whether this is due to our assessment model. First, although we can say students improved, we do not know if the grades are accurately reflecting achievement as described in the rubric. And even if the improvement was reflecting improvement of skills as described in the rubric, we cannot say that the academic mentor's formative feedback in the model played a role in this improvement, because we do not know whether the feedback provided met the characteristics of formative feedback. For this reason, we have also analyzed the fidelity of implementation to better understand what was the impact of our assessment model and whether we still need to work on implementation strategies to achieve the required fidelity. For our assessment model to be effective at the scale required in this capstone program, the main challenges are that it needs to be implemented by academics who were not involved in its design, and they might not fully understand the rationale behind it or the way it needs to be delivered. Only when the model is implemented with fidelity can its effectiveness actually be evaluated. For this reason, using a fidelity of implementation framework, we identified the main components in the assessment model that need to be actioned to be able to say that the model has actually been implemented. These are known as critical components, and in our framework, they were identified as formative feedback, which needs to be timely and actionable, and as the correct use of the rubric for feedback. This diagram summarizes the assessment model and illustrates the centrality of the rubric and the importance of actionable and timely feedback for this iterative model to be effective for learning. When designing the implementation plan, we didn't only consider the critical components of our framework, but also the moderating variables. Moderating variables are characteristics outside the model that affect its implementation. For example, contextual characteristics such as commitment of academics to the capstone program, the workload of academics, student attitudes, and students' feedback literacy, or their ability to take on feedback provided. Taking into account the identified critical components and the moderating variables, we designed an implementation plan. This implementation plan consisted on supporting academic mentors and on ensuring the procedural nature of the model was achieved. Strategies for supporting academic mentors included training sessions, partnering academic mentors together, creating a Microsoft Teams channel where all academic mentors could communicate and ask questions to each other. And strategies to support the procedure consisted of a clear schedule that included 4 checkpoints in the form of 3 panels during the teaching period and a grading moderating session at the end of it. The panels were a central component of this implementation plan. These panels occurred at the end of each iteration and consisted of the students presenting to a panel of 2 academic mentors, the unit chair, and an expert in the field of their project. This panel helped academic mentors keep up with the schedule so they can provide timely feedback, and it also supported them in identifying the feedback students needed, in particular when the project was not in their field of expertise. To analyze the fidelity of implementation, we looked at the presence or absence of actionable feedback. As we can see here, 75% of submissions received written feedback, but some of this feedback were just comments such as "well done," rather than actionable guidance. So only half of submissions actually received actionable guidance. Out of the 24 mentors that worked in this trimester, 11 of them consistently provided written feedback, whereas 5 of them never provided written feedback. Only a nominal grade. So we need to be aware that although some students didn't receive any actionable feedback, all of them received a nominal grade, which is a form of feedback. The analysis of the time between the panel and feedback being provided to students indicate that feedback became more timely across iterations, with academic mentors providing timely feedback to most students by the 3rd iteration. This indicates that the strategies put in place to support this critical component of feedback worked well. When looking at data per mentor as an average of the 3 iterations, we can observe a big difference across mentors. This graph represents the data per mentor, so each bar represents a mentor. This is the time between the panel and the feedback, and this vertical line represents day 7. So everything below this line is timely feedback, and everything after this line is late feedback. As we can see, 7 mentors consistently provided timely feedback, and 7 mentors consistently provided late feedback. This indicates that equitability was not achieved. Students have had a very different experience in terms of formative feedback depending on what mentor was in charge of their teams. The key message that I hope you have taken away of this presentation is that just because a model is evidence-based, it does not mean it will be effective. When designing a model that will be applied by teaching staff that are not involved in the design, effort needs to be focused on ensuring fidelity of implementation is achieved by all teaching staff. Thank you very much.
Hey, hello again. We are here in the QA part of our second paper this morning. Laura Tubino is here to answer and discuss about the paper. We already have one question by Max. He says that it's a very interesting topic, and the question is, are the crucial points to achieve timely and actionable feedback that could be automated?
Thanks for that question, Max. That's a really good question, and it's something we are exploring right now. Seeing that in this model, the feedback is supposed to go towards the rubric. So the students are reflecting towards the rubric, and the feedback should also be related to the rubric. There is a possibility of automating the feedback and having predetermined feedback based on the different personas. So already understanding what kind of thing they will need to move forward. In terms of timely feedback, that is a little bit more difficult. We currently have incorporated in the system where this assessment is delivered some emails that come every week, but also we have emails going to the wider teaching staff that indicates how many, like for how long have students been waiting for feedback for each supervisor. So they should be aware that everybody is seeing that information. Still, because of the workload of different supervisors and their different positions, that they still do not provide timely feedback. So that is something cultural that we probably have to address in a different way.
Okay. So while more questions arrive, I have a question about how do you create the teams? Because you mentioned that the students may have different expectations about the grade that they want to get from the course. So they just want, for example, only to pass, only want high distinction of the course. So in the teams, do you mix the students with different expectations, or what happens if a team only have students with low expectations, another team with students with high expectations? How do you deal with this?
So that is one of the main reasons we developed this framework. There's around 700 students because they come from all the different courses in the School of IT. So we don't really know all of them, and we cannot pick and choose who will be in each group. They are provided groups according to their interests. They choose what projects they want to be included in, and then according to that, they get a group. But the way this framework works is that even if you have only or mostly low students, so low achieving students, that will not affect any student who wants to achieve a better grade, because the grades depend on what you do and how you behave. So it's not dependent on the product. So even if the group does not achieve the product that they were meant to achieve, the student who works and does everything as they should be doing, they will get the grade that they deserve. And this is also, so we have thought a lot about this, and the fairness of this and the equitability. And we think that even in the workplace, because this is a very authentic experience, even in the workplace, sometimes you are set with groups and different teams that don't fit and don't deliver. So it's and that's one of the most important things about this model. It should be an individual grade.
And related to this, to the grading of the individuals, how do you grade them? Because you mentioned that they have provided evidence about the work, but they work in teams. So, and you mentioned, no, it's not the work of the team, but it's the work of the individual. So how do you distinguish?
Types of evidence. So one type is the product. So it's what they are developing. That can come from either something tangible. It can also come from the GitHub, like how many commitments each person have, how they have engaged. But it also comes from other places, such as so every team has a Microsoft Teams space. So they can even provide some screenshots of the team space and how they have tried to engage with their teams, or how they have led other people or supported or mentored other people. So that's also other evidence they can show. So it's not only about the product, it's about the whole process, how they mentor others, how they plan their project, and all those things.
But each team or each individual decide which kind of evidence they provide to justify their work.
Yeah, the assessment is individual, so they reflect against a rubric, and with each reflection, they provide evidence of each criteria. So some evidence will be on self-awareness, there will be evidence on product, on IT skills, but also on teamwork and mentoring.
Okay.
They choose the evidence they want to provide, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work for assess all these evidences, because each one is different.
Yeah, in fact, it would be, and that's why the panels, which is one of the implementation strategies that we have, was really useful, because in the panels, the academic mentors got to understand what each student was doing, because it's an oral presentation where they actually talk. So it was then easier to go and grade. So the panel made it a lot easier to grade each student.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, very interesting. We have another question by Kai. Do members of the teaching staff ever join the students and see team groups, or do you rely on them coming to you with evidence of their work?
That's a good question. The models of teams are set by the school, not by the students. And they actually are rolled over trimester after trimester. So actually the team, although the people in the team change, because the projects are continuous, so students come in and then when they finish the unit, they come out, the team is always there and we have access. Not only the unit chair and the supervisors, but I am the lecturer in curriculum design, so I'm about curriculum design and I have access to all of the Microsoft Teams to check how things are going and what needs addressing.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, we still have 3 minutes, so we have time for more questions. So they are very welcome. In the meanwhile, I have another question. If you had to change, or you have to repeat this experience, okay, in an ideal situation, once that you know everything that you know now, what would you do? Do you repeat the same process? What would you change?
So I think the main limitation of this model is the academic engagement. So when academics are engaged, this runs very smoothly and everything works. But when academics are not focused on teaching and learning, some of them are more focused on research. So that's where the problems arise. So I think if there's one thing that we are thinking of doing more often there is that mentor partnering where we get mentors together, so they go together to the panels and things, is to do that more intentionally, more strategically, and partner somebody who is really engaged with those that are less engaged or less experienced, so that they put some pressure and accountability, but also mentoring on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly, cultural.
Yeah, okay. And there was another question that I had in my mind. So the teams, you say that you have students that come from different programs. So the teams can be composed by students from different programs, or so it's like a multidisciplinary team.
Yes. For example, we can have some students that come from software design, whereas other students are from cybersecurity, and they work together in a project. And they assign each other roles, so some of them become back-end product. Yeah, so it's like a very authentic experience, like a real working group. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's nice. Very interesting. Okay, 1 more minute. Any other question or comment? Okay, if not, we can have some seconds of rest before the next presentation. Okay, so thank you very much, Laura. It has been nice to hear and to talk to you.
Thank you, Anna. Bye.
Thank you all the attenders and the questions. Thanks. Bye-bye.